So I'm here today to tell you a story about 3 designers, a road trip, and how we discovered an abundance of manufacturing and industry that still exists in Scotland today. 6 years ago, I was starting my product design course at Glasgow School of Art. Everything is designed. So from the pen you're using, the shirt you're wearing, the way you interacted with the train service on the way here today, right through to the countless number of digital apps and services you're using on your phone. So every single thing I was designing, no matter what shape or form it was taking, I kept running into the exact same problem. No matter how amazing I thought my ideas were, how exciting the project was, when it came to physically making a product, an object, everything I kept making kept looking like some sort of Blue Peter disaster. I didn't have the practical skills to actually put things into production or how to understand how the manufacturing industry worked. It was really intimidating. So I went right back to basics, and when I was 16, I'd worked at a furniture factory, and I remember that felt really, really good to be making things again. So I emailed a tutor I'd had when I was in Philadelphia on exchange, and I asked him if I could come and intern for him over the summer. I knew he ran his own furniture company, and I thought I could learn a few things about prototyping and making. So he said yes, thank God, and I jumped on a plane, and I went off to live in Brooklyn for the summer. We were working specifically in Cork, which I very quickly realized you could cut, cast, mold. I got the chance to take a product from the raw material right through to delivering it to the final consumer that was using the object. I spent the entire summer, head to toe, covered in cork dust, physically exhausted, and learning how to use machines that I've been avoiding in the workshop for years. It was so empowering as a designer. I can't even explain to you how exciting it was to be able to see in front of me things I was able to build, things I was able to make. It was the most exciting feeling. And I was raring to come back to Scotland and start actually making the ideas I was coming up with, as well as just sketching them and putting them out as a concept. So I also realized, as I should have said, that I realized that the material knowledge as a designer is really important. So Cork, which we were working in, supports a local economy, skills and trades in Portugal. And so as a designer, if you change a wine bottle design from being a wine stopper to a screw top, actually you're changing the balance of a whole industrial and global production system. And it's really dangerous as designers not to have a real understanding of that. So I came back, and I remember on my way back to Scotland noting down in my sketchbook, Scottish industry was a big question mark. I'd grown up with this idea of a decline of industry, that it wasn't really there anymore, manufacturing wasn't relevant. Things like craft were always seen as a bit of a lesser of the arts and not really respected in design as much. But I was really empowered by this making thing, and I was determined to find some local production in Scotland. So I started using Google, because, what else do you look at? And I realized that everything I was Googling, I either didn't really know the right term to use. There were lists and lists of technical jargon in these websites of technical data. Any databases that did exist were really closed, or you had to pay to use them. And most of them were really outdated. So many of these websites just felt like they hadn't been updated since about 1995, and for all I knew, those companies and those factories had gone out of business. So I started asking other designers and artists how they got their work made. That's where it got really, really frustrating. So designer after designer, artist after artist, architects, theatre production companies, small business, they all started telling me the exact same story, that they were desperate to start making their work locally and make it in Scotland, but they were just finding it impossible to find these factories or find people they could go and work with to supply materials to actually engage in local production. It was intimidating to go and access industry. It was confusing. These places were completely hidden, and so often people would either give up or they'd end up ordering thousands and thousands of units from the other side of the world, and often they'd come back not correct, or it would be a huge investment. So I didn't give up. I actually started going on a bit of a quest to go and find industrial estates. I can't drive, so I'd get on a train and then walk down these, into the middle of nowhere, it felt like, to these industrial parks and industrial estates, and I'd note down all the names of these companies on the side of the walls. Eventually, I was brave enough to actually knock on the doors and just ask what was inside. And this was absolutely incredible. I'm so glad I spent all those days in the rain walking around estates. Inside I found welders that were making the lighting display systems for Coldplay on their international tour. I found an industrial lace factory that's still using the looms from the 1900s and whose lace goes off to be used in Hollywood films like Lincoln. I realised that our Turner Prize winners, our Martin Boyces, were making their work in little workshops in the north of Glasgow. I realised that the world's top fashion houses, Vivienne Westwood, Chanel, they were all making their products here in a little place in Ayr. So if our international designers and international artists were choosing to make work in Scotland, why on earth were the local designers, the local small businesses, not choosing to do the same? So at the same time, I was looking at a lot of open source design, things like Fab Labs, Skillshares, and I couldn't help but think that these traditional industries, open source, digital technologies, craftsmanship, and the internet were all related. So I went back and I designed a really simple platform that would allow artists and designers to make their work locally and at the same time would provide work for these local factories. I called it MakeWorks. And essentially I thought of it as a match.com for artists and designers to link up with the manufacturing industry, combined with a little bit of the rebranding of the industry because, to be honest, that technical jargon is just not exciting and not inspiring people to go and work there. I wanted to make manufacturing open, make it accessible, and inspire people to go and work with them. So at that point, I'd tumbled out of the art school and I'd convinced MacLab, who are a local digital fabrication workshop, to let me work at the back of one of their offices to get started. And I think I spent about 6 or 7 months applying for every single grant, pitched, I think, 200 times in 6 months. Public arts funding, I was told things like, this is really, really innovative, but it's not the right type of innovation we need in Scotland right now. Or I was told that manufacturing actually, that really doesn't exist. You really are, off on some crazy tangent here. We don't believe that local production is valuable. So 6 months in, and I'm in a pretty low confidence place. I was completely skint as well, which was not helping. And I remember crying on my best friend's sofa, just saying, what am I going to do? I can see there's a need for this. I know it's valuable, but I just don't know if I'm the right person to do it. And so she just said, look, you don't need funding. Just figure out a way to get it online yourself. You don't need a web developer. Just start a blog or something. And so the penny dropped. I went back, and the next day I pinned up a map on the wall of the workshop, and I just put all these little pins in all these different factories I've been looking at. They were all across the country, not just around the Central Belt, Glasgow, Edinburgh area. And so I very quickly realised that actually, maybe it wasn't just a small blog, this was an entire road trip around Scotland. So I phoned up a factory that I used to work for when I was 16, and I asked him if I could borrow his old VW camper van. It happened to be a Tartan 1979 VW, which we called Rhubarb, and we ended up travelling around in her, living in her for 3 months. I also phoned up that best friend and said to her, look, I can't drive, do you want to drive me around the country and we'll visit all these factories? so yeah, there we were, that was it, we were on the road. We convinced ferry companies to pay for our travel cost. All of a sudden I put a press article out and I had makers from all around the country who were emailing me saying, come and stay with us, we'll put you up for the night, it'd be really great to meet you. People were really waiting for us to go out and do something like this. People really wanted to make things locally. So we set off. We also invited 8 other artists and designers and residents to come and join us so that there would be, I guess, more of an influence and an understanding of inspiring other people of what we were out there to do. We partnered with a film company, did a crash course in making short films so that every place we were going to visit, we'd make a short clip of what they did, and we had a photographer join us as well. We went down a huge number of single-track roads, over 3,000 miles, right to the top of Unst, which, if you don't know, is like the top of Shetland, which is as high as you can possibly get in the British Isles, right the way down to the border. We went to, I think, every single industrial estate in the country. They still are my playground. And we came back, and we have just discovered a complete abundance of factories, makers, and suppliers that really do still exist. We visited 120 in 90 days on the road, and every single place we went, there were 10 more surrounding them, so we need to go back on the road this summer again. We asked so many questions, and we were delighted by the fact that these factories really wanted to be able to open up to artists and designers and let people in, but they didn't really know how to do it, so they started to see us as a bit of a vehicle to pass that information on. We accessed things like, this is a tannery in the centre of Glasgow. These guys make the outfit, the centre of Emirates, all their airplanes, but you can also go to them and ask for one hide dyed in a specific colour for the piece of furniture that you're making, and it's right in the city centre and nobody knows about it. We went places like Fife and Glenrock. This is a huge stonemasonry place up near Aberdeen. They did all the architectural stonework for the Scottish Parliament. But equally, if you go to them as a designer or an artist, you can have amazing, amazing individual sculptures made. And they had machines there that I literally had just geeked out over these machines on YouTube videos before, and then walking into this factory and seeing them there in front of me, it was so inspiring. We also really started to understand the basics of how things are made. So this is an industrial dyeing facility, which is down in the Borders. So if you think about where the colours come from in the clothes that you're wearing, and actually this factory was really interesting because they used to only dye in lots of 1,000 kilograms of cashmere, for example. But now they understand that people like to make things in smaller runs and smaller production, so they will literally dye 1 kilogram of cashmere in a bespoke colour for an artist or designer looking to make a short run of jumpers. We visited some incredible, inspiring individual makers as well, who are so open to collaboration and embracing traditional techniques and trades with new ways and new digital technologies. This is Nancy Tannery, who's a fantastic gilder, and she's now started working with laser cutting as well as her traditional restoration techniques to create new whiskey packaging for some of the top whiskey companies that are exporting from Scotland. And even since we've got back, we've been hearing stories of the people that we've been visiting, collaborating with other architects and designers that have been hearing about it through our blog and through our radio show. So this is Montrose Rope and Sail, who are incredible sailmakers up in Montrose. We walked in there and it was actually really refreshing to walk into a factory of machinists who normally are all women, but this was a huge row of burly guys stitching away using tarpaulin. And one of the great things about it is you can send them a sketch of anything and they'll make it for you in tarpaulin. So normally that's for the offshore trade, but again, opening that up to new ideas. We had an architect go up with them, and within the week they'd made these skin structures for a public art exhibition. But what was so exciting about that for the architect was that within the week they could go up, they could have a face-to-face conversation, they could collaborate on the project, and there was more control over the production, not just sending a drawing off and hoping it would come back sort of right. So now we're back, and we are putting all these films and all these images and all this in-depth information that we ask these companies into a digital directory that we'll be launching soon. And what's really exciting about it is bringing together the digital world to make these real-life analog connections. I cannot wait to see other people going out there and pushing the boundaries and these skills. And really, I just want everyone to feel as empowered as I did when I was in that workshop in Brooklyn, realizing that I could really make anything. And the fact is that there is that abundance of skill, of industry, of craftsmanship, of people that are so valuable out there. And I really encourage you to go and work with that abundance of people and make work.